We're talking about the same thing we always talk about. Who will Arsenal's next manager be? Looks like it's going to be Unai Emery. Guys, take it away.
Thank you very much, Seb. We're in Independence Square here in Kiev, which over the next few days will become the focal point for Real Madrid and Liverpool fans travelling to the Champions League final. We'll, of course, be talking about that final in depth over the next couple of shows. But, Robbo, let's focus for the moment, shall we? Big news regarding your old team, Unai Emery. Do you like this?
I do, because for a long time I've been complaining that Arsenal haven't had a coach that's prepared the team well enough. They haven't looked at the opposition. They haven't been drilled on the training field. They don't know what they're doing defensively. The players play off the cuff. Unai Emery will come to Arsenal, and if he does come to Arsenal, he will make sure they know exactly what their jobs are. He's a methodical manager. He'll leave no stone unturned. He'll make sure that the players know what their jobs are, what the game plan is. He'll work day in, day out on the training field to get his ideas across and get his tactics across. So that point of view, I think he's the right choice.
You say he's methodical about his preparations, but take a look at what happened at PSG. Got a lot of criticism from the boys on the show regarding the fact he didn't take control of the Cavani-Neymar situation.
Different sort of players. He's not going to have that problem at Arsenal. There's got players there that he's got to control. He can go and manage Arsenal's players. They haven't got big names. That's been a criticism of Arsenal players. They haven't had any headstrong players that are going to challenge the manager. I don't think they're going to challenge Unai Emery either. So when he was at PSG, he had players that were hard to deal with. He didn't maybe want Neymar. He maybe didn't want the two to play together. So that was difficult for him. And I think he's the sort of manager that doesn't like confrontation with certain players, but he needs to be confrontational with these Arsenal players because that's what they haven't had for quite some while.
So with regards to expectations going into the start next season, what should they be for Arsenal? Obviously, he had so much success regarding the Europa League with Sevilla. Is that where we're at? Is that what Arsenal should be looking to achieve?
It depends what players they bring in, because I'm not sure he's going to be in charge of that. That's why they've got a person, head of recruitment, to come in. We know from Borussia Dortmund, he's going to be in charge of most of the buying of players. And I think he's the sort of manager that doesn't worry too much about what's going on in terms of the buying of the players. He's quite easy. He's not going to control the board and say he's demand more players. But what he has to do is make sure he gets the tactics right. And I think Arsenal have got to be looking to get back into the top four and maybe a cup. They're not going to challenge for the Premier League title this year.
Mikel Arteta, of course, is the big favourite leading up to, 24 hours ago, pretty much. You weren't sure of this appointment.
Definitely not sure of his appointment if he was going to get it.
Did they bottle it? Did they go for the easy option in Unai Emery? That seems to be the suggestion from some Arsenal fans.
I would say they were going for the easy option with Mikel Arteta, in my view, because he's somebody that apparently he's been challenging them. He wanted more and more from the board, more assurances from the board in terms of players coming in, who he could have on his staff, players that he wanted maybe out of the club. Unai Emery's not going to challenge the board on that front. But he had no experience, and it's a massive change from being a head coach to then going and being the manager. Well, you've got to come up with a game plan. You've got to change things on the pitch. All the time he's under Pep Guardiola. Pep Guardiola determines the tactics. He's the one that goes out on the training field, and he might say to Mikel Arteta, I want you to coach this, I want you to do that. Until you're the manager, you never have to worry about those things. When things start to go wrong after 20 minutes, do you trust yourself to make the right decisions? In my view, because Mikel Arteta hadn't had the experience of being a manager, he hadn't even run a youth team, he hadn't even run a reserve side where he had to make those decisions, he would have been the wrong choice in my view.
But Arsenal fans will say, but it was good that it was having an old Arsenal boy in charge. Now, a little bit of that has died with Arsene Wenger going, and Unai Emery's got no connection with the club. It's just losing a bit of its identity.
Well, we don't know who the assistant manager is going to be just yet. Steve Bold might still be there. I'd be
how did you get Steve Bold into this conversation?
Surprised if he does stay there. And why should you have an ex-Arsenal player? I don't understand why you have to have an ex-Arsenal player on the coaching, or an ex-Liverpool, or an ex-Chelsea. You know, Chelsea do it quite often. They did it with the late Ray Wilkins quite often. I don't see why you have to have that. You need somebody to come in, bring his own people with him, and start again, because Arsenal need a real freshen up.
Stewart Robson, as always, thank you very much. Back to you in the studio, Seb.
Thanks, guys. Here's a look at Emery's recent resume. Of course, kind of rose to prominence during that 4-year stretch at Valencia, brief spell at Spartak Moscow, 3 straight Europa League titles with Sevilla, and then the 2 years at PSG. Nobody watched more of Emery's PSG squads than our Julien Laurent. Jules, what do you make of Arsenal's decision to make Emery their next manager?
I think it's a very interesting one. I can see on one hand why some of the fans are a bit underwhelmed by him. I get that. But I can see on the other hand why he's ticking a lot of the boxes that Arsenal wanted him to tick. I think they have the very rigorous process to appoint a new manager. I think they went for who they thought was the best. No one turned them down. They just picked Emery ahead of everyone else because they were convinced by him, they were impressed by him when they interviewed him, and they really believe he's the right guy for the job to succeed Arsene Wenger. He's, like Stewart said, he's a very hard-working coach. He's not a manager. He's not going to get involved in transfers. He's not going to complain if he doesn't have enough players or if not enough money spent. He will only focus on the training field to work with the player he has, the player he's given, to improve them like he did in Paris, like he did in Sevilla, where him and Monchi worked so well for those years where they won all those Europa Leagues. And I think that's very interesting. Tactically, he's a very astute manager. We saw that with PSG. Yes, he made mistakes there many times, and we said that. And he had a problem with the egos in the dressing room, but there's no superstars in the Arsenal dressing room. Mesut Ozil is the only one, maybe, but in Paris he had plenty of superstars and he couldn't deal with him. I think this context is different and Arsenal suits him far more than what PSG did.
Ryan, if the point is to get better, is this really an upgrade over Arsene Wenger?
Well, it depends on what type of upgrade you're looking at. Are you looking at for somebody that's going to inject a different attitude or a different idea? I think you're getting that with Unai Emery. The guys have talked about the tactical switches that he makes. He determines the opponent and actually coaches to that point. And that hasn't happened with Arsenal. The one thing I'll say is to get better, they need to get better defensively. They need to have somebody that's going to be in that back line that it will boss people around. And that is something that Arsenal hasn't had. Whether even if it's not a center back, if it's the defensive center midfielder, somebody that's really going to set the tone. For Arsenal, it's been too easy, in my opinion. They've allowed teams to have too much of the ball at different times. Even though they love the ball, they didn't disrupt enough games, and they need a disruptor in that team.
Look, I think the comparison between Unai Emery and Arsene Wenger is an unfair one. Arsene Wenger at his absolute best, yes, you have Arsene Wenger over Unai Emery. But I think Arsene Wenger went well past his best, which is why you saw the regression in results for Arsenal Football Club. Now you need somebody who can get you back to those past glories. And I think Unai Emery has shown that he can do that. Got Valencia back into the Champions League despite Valencia having severe financial difficulties at the time. Kind of wrote his name into Europa League history, as it were, with Sevilla. And now, okay, the animal that PSG was and continues to be, totally different from where Arsenal are right now. Different dressing room, different demands. I think Unai Emery is the man who can get Arsenal back to where their fans believe they should be.
Jules, direct question here. Do you believe in 2 years Unai Emery will still be in charge at Arsenal?
Yes, I do. And you know what? I also think that his style of football is far more suited to the Premier League and to Arsenal than Arsene Wenger's style was. He's closer to Jurgen Klopp in a way that he likes verticality, high intensity, high pressing. And that's not what Arsenal were under Arsene Wenger. They were playing sideways, short passes for a long spell of time, and they didn't have that intensity that the Premier League requires right now, that football right now requires. And we see that with Klopp, we see that with Guardiola, we see that with Pochettino. And I think it's good that Arsenal are bringing that to their squad now. And like we said, the players have to get on board. They were not so on board at PSG. Let's hope that Arsenal players will get on board with what Unai Emery has to offer to them.